starts in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of Champions Belt Club Podcast. I'm your host, Jason Davis, and I'm here with my good friend and brother from another, Mr. Tony T. Tony Thorpe. How you doing this evening, my friend?
I'm good, buddy. How you doing?
I'm good, man. I'm good. How's the week been going?
You know what? The long weekend threw me off, as I told you backstage. I thought today was Sunday, and I nearly forgot our show.
Fair play. But you didn't, man, and we appreciate you're here, and we're happy to have you with us, of course, because we love having you here. We have a special guest this evening. Would you like to do the honors in introducing him?
Jesse is a friend of mine. Met him through another good buddy, Rob Collins, and he's a really interesting guy with some awesome stories for wrestling. Mr. Jesse Santana, we're going to have you on tonight. It's going to be awesome.
Let's do it. Nice. Welcome to the show, Mr. Jesse Santana. Thanks for coming on this evening and for joining us. We're thrilled to have you here. How are you this evening, sir?
Doing great. Couldn't be better.
Awesome. Thanks for being here, man. We really appreciate it. So, Jesse, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about your background in wrestling and your sort of your fandom and your also your work in wrestling as well.
Yes, I actually been a fan since 1967, since I was 5 years old. My father started taking me to Greensboro and all the armories around the Triad Piedmont area in North Carolina. And as a teenager, we had backyard wrestling in the 70s. It was totally different than probably a lot of people today, but we made our own belts and our own costumes and had storylines. It was great. And I moved to California in 86, and I started training with Vern Landon at Summers Gym in Sun Valley. Trained there for a couple of years, wrestled a little bit, but then I met a girl and love took over, and I didn't do anything for quite a few years. But I kept my daughter. We had a child a few years later, and I kept my daughter. I took her to every wrestling show in Los Angeles. And last 12, 13 years, I've gotten back into it. I wrestled the first year 3 or 4 times, realized I'm a little bit too out of shape. But with my mind, I can bring gold still around my waist, kind of, but in my hands. And I've been managing ever since. I've had a great run, enjoyed myself, met a lot of good people, and a lot of people I don't like, but hey, that's life.
That's awesome. I'm just gonna pull up a picture here. These are some photos. I'm just gonna also pull that banner down so we can see this a little better. This is a photo of you on the top here. That would have been a belt you had made when you were younger.
Yes, I was 13 years old, and I was able to buy these thin sheets of aluminum for 10 cents a sheet. So I'd go buy $1 worth. It's 10 sheets of thin aluminum cut to shape and glued together with contact cement and glued on black naugahyde and painted with model car paint.
That is awesome.
That's my version of the original United States heavyweight title at that
That
time.
is awesome. And then, if I'm not mistaken,
And I
in
made the mask.
You made the mask as well?
I made the mask as well out of a T-shirt and black naugahyde, and I hand sewed every bit of it.
Holy moly.
That's awesome.
That is amazing. That's awesome. So you were self-made, all that whole outfit you built.
Yes, and that shirt that I'm wearing, unfortunately, the picture doesn't show it, but it's a gold Mylar, real sparkly shirt that I bought real cheap for like $5 at a bargain store. It didn't have a lining on the inside, and boy, did it itch you like crazy. It's like itching powder all over. But hey,
Paying the
to look
price.
the part.
Had to look the part, paying the price. We have Noor from Malaysia joining us this evening. Good evening, Noor. Welcome. We're doing great. We hope you're doing beautiful over there in Malaysia, and good wishes and good prayers for you and your family and your newborn recently. Thanks for hanging out with us. If I'm not mistaken, in those two bottom pictures, Jesse, I think that's a picture of you working with with Hacksaw, Jim Duggan, and then also with Mick Foley there on the right. Is that correct?
Yes, that's for a big time wrestling. The promoter was Stephen Fry, and that was in Mocksville, North Carolina in 2013. I represented the Russian Assassin, and he was wrestling Hacksaw Jim Duggan, and he had something in his eyes there, so I was trying to help him get his eyes cleared out.
Right, absolutely. You're just trying to help the guy out.
I was, and
Yeah.
Mick Foley, I guess, thought I was doing something else, so he snuck up behind me and spun me around and stuck that stinky sock down my throat, and did the same thing to the Assassin, and Hacksaw got the pin.
Man, clearly a misunderstanding.
It sure was.
That's awesome.
It sure was. But hey,
that's amazing.
Got to work with a couple of legends there, so that was great.
Yeah, you sure did. And how was it to work with those guys? Did you find them pretty easy to work with? Were they pretty open to things and open to suggestions?
Oh yes, very personable, outgoing, completely different than what you would think.
Yeah.
Afterwards, Mick Foley made sure that that I got the sock, so I kept the sock. Hacksaw, my bodyguard, got hit with a 2x4, so he gave him the 2x4.
Wow, that's
but
cool.
They were magic to work in the ring, and it was a good show. There was a good card. The whole show was booked very well, and it was a packed house. Had a great time there. My father
awesome.
got to go see it. He would see every one of my shows that I was in, so that meant a lot to me.
Yeah, that's fantastic. That's awesome. Love it. And I love your story, and I love the history of it and everything goes with it. Hey, Joey Gray joining us this evening. How you doing, my friend? Thanks for tuning in and hanging out with us. Really great to see you. Thanks very much.
Hope you're well,
awesome.
Joey.
Sorry, what you say, buddy?
I just said I hope you're well, Joey.
There you go. Awesome. So what we like to do, Jesse, is we like to talk a little bit every week about wrestling that is right now and wrestling that was a little bit. We like to reminisce a little bit about the past. We always start with what is first. So we like to call this section Dirt Sheets and Draws.
Whoa.
So, of course, the big wrestling news this weekend, of course, was the recent SummerSlam pay-per-view for the WWE in Detroit, Michigan. Pretty good card of wrestlers this weekend. We had matchups between Logan Paul and Ricochet. We had Cody Rhodes going up against Brock Lesnar. We had LA Knight in a battle royal with everybody else, because that's all anybody was really focusing on, it seems like, is LA Knight lately. and how he's not being used or booked very well by the WWE, according to a lot of the dirt sheets. We had Shayna Baszler against Ronda Rousey, Gunther against Drew McIntyre, Seth Rollins against Finn Balor, Bianca Belair against Asuka and Charlotte Flair, and then we had Roman Reigns, of course, against Jey Uso in I believe they called it a tribal, or what is that what they called it? A tribal match, or a can't remember the term of it now. Something along that lines, though. What'd you guys think? Did you get to catch any of that this weekend? Any of the matches?
Jesse, you want to go first?
I didn't. Yeah, I'll go. I didn't. I had a full weekend. I got to go to Roanoke at the Comic-Con up there, and I got to hang out with Jimmy Hart. And,
That's right.
Brutus the Barber Beefcake and Ricky Steamboat. And so I had a kind of a busy weekend. And then yesterday, my wife had me doing honeydew things around the house. So I didn't get to do anything.
That's fair.
Weekend, really.
Well, the opening match of the night was, of course, Logan Paul against Ricochet, and in that particular matchup, Logan Paul came out on top. A little bit of interference with his podcast partner, slipping him a pair of brass knuckles, and they had a brief misunderstanding in the middle of the ring, and Logan Paul took the win. What did you think of that one, Tony? Did you get a chance to see it?
I did watch it. I think Logan Paul is the best celebrity wrestler they've ever brought out.
Yeah, I think his progression as a wrestler and the rate at which he's progressing is unheard of.
Yeah,
I can't think of anybody that's come off of, and I mean, he was already, we know he was a good athlete before he started with the WWE. Yeah. That was established. But his it isn't even just his athleticism. He understands. He's already starting to get a handle on the psychology, and he's already starting to get a handle on how to work the crowd and how to get a reaction. Yeah, and he's doing a really pretty good job. I in some of that match, you could even say that he did some of the heavy lifting in terms of the psychology and in terms of the crowd work.
I was really impressed with it. Like I said, I've been impressed with him. And I find it funny that he left right away after his match, flew to Dallas to watch his brother box.
Yeah.
His in-ring gear on.
With his in-ring gear still on. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, I you know what? People hate them, but they're dominating the world that they're in.
They're dominating combat sports and professional wrestling right now. I mean, he's there. Yeah. He's quickly becoming... and it's one of those things where like people love to hate him, obviously, and that makes him a great heel for the business. But I also think he's slowly winning people over with his work and his work ethic. Yeah. And I think, he's going to be swimming upriver if he wants to keep running as a heel soon, because I think people are starting to really, really, really sort of respect him for the work he's doing in there. So
like when I watched his match against Ricochet, I mean, he's got the money and time to invest, and he's got the best trainers teaching him.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. But for him to skyrocket, I've been training for 2 years. Anyway, that's another story. But, on to the next match.
Fair. In our next matchup, we had Cody Rhodes going up against Brock Lesnar in the trilogy, the final match in their trilogy of matches. The point, and obviously in this whole setup, was to make Cody look more dominant and look strong coming out of this. So they had to make sure in the booking of this that Cody earned Brock's respect and that he earned the crowd's respect going through this. So that means he had to get his butt whooped pretty badly for a part of the program, and then he had to make his comeback, and he had to look kind of strong and look determined. This was more sort of proving his mettle than it really was making him look like a badass. Yeah. And I think they did a decent job with it. I think the way that they programmed it and the way he came out looking at the end of the match, it made him look, he never ever looked dominant in any of the matches with Brock, because he shouldn't, because Brock is an absolute monster. Yeah. But he looked tough. He looked like somebody that was going to take a hit to get a hit. And I think that made him look more title worthy.
Yeah.
And I think it raised his stock definitely in the WWE sort of fandom's eyes, which is what it was intended to do.
Yeah. Yeah. No, he
Also,
gets a lot
washed
of bumps.
the AEW off of him as well.
Yeah. Oh yeah. He took a lot of bumps in that match for sure. And
Yeah, and he has been. He's been bumping like crazy for Brock all the way through. And I mean, the reality is, if he didn't want to, Brock would make him bump anyway. So
yeah, of course, Brock's just unbelievable.
yeah, he's a freak of nature. He just is, and it's just his credibility that he brings to the ring is very valuable. And they used it well in this context with Cody. It really helped. It really raised Cody's value. So yeah, and it was a they also managed to flip Brock into back into a face in the context of one match, which was pretty good.
Yeah, for sure. I like the embrace at the end where it was like,
Yep.
"Lever, my respect."
Yep,
but,
absolutely.
Yeah, I like Brock. I think he's a legitimate badass.
Yeah. I think he probably doesn't get as much credit for his psychology and his I mean, he's having to work with a lot of people that are not his size and not his style of wrestling, and he's starting to pay it forward and really make some other people look good.
Yeah.
So
sure.
Yeah, for sure. So then we had of course the battle royal. I don't think anybody was really expecting anybody but LA Knight to come forward with that, and he did. And so hopefully the fandom will relax a little bit about the way they're booking him right now. He got his win. It's probably not the kind of win they want him to have. People seem to want to have him in that main title picture. He's certainly popular right now. There's definitely there's a movement there where he's connected to the audience. He's got top sales in at least 4 of the top 5 merchandise spots.
That changed last week's show. I had mentioned he had number 1, 4, and 5. He actually now has 1, 3, 4, and 5.
Yeah, so he's carrying 4 of the top 5 slots for merchandise.
Yeah.
So they're going to have to listen to that somewhat. There's money to be made there.
Yeah.
So then we had not my favorite match of the night for sure. We had Shayna Baszler going up against Ronda Rousey in an MMA rules match. Nobody seems to have yet been able to solve the mysterious puzzle of how to convey believable MMA shoot style wrestling and it not look terrible, like it seems to look over and over and over again. It's really hard to make things that hurt look like not hurt. And so I really wish they'd sort of stay away from that for now and until they can figure out how to sort of put a better spin on the presentation of that, because it just always ends up looking deflated and de-energized and just not believable. And these are 2 of the better MMA fighters in the world. So if they can't pull it off right now, I think we should hit hold or hit pause and just leave it out of the matches for a while.
They should have just had a wrestling match, but it wasn't to me. It wasn't SummerSlam worthy. It was absolutely terrible. I mean, they're both phenomenal athletes. I don't want to take that away from them. It just was like I felt terrible for both of them.
Yeah, and I mean, the reality is that Rousey is an incredibly talented athlete, but she has never been popular with the audiences. She's a natural heel. She's always been that. And you can't put her into one of these babyface positions that quickly and expect the audience to connect with her or empathize with her or care. And so you essentially had a match with 2 heels beating each other up in a fake sort of MMA play fight, and it just didn't go anywhere. It just fizzled.
It was so bad.
Yeah, so definitely not their best moment, that's for sure. We had the matchup between Drew McIntyre and Gunther. Gunther continues to put shine on that belt, continues to sort of make the Intercontinental title valuable. It wasn't his best matchup. It was more or less just a chop fest. wasn't the best matchup we've seen. I'm starting to enjoy him being matched up with different styles a little bit more.
Yeah.
But he's looking like he's getting closer and closer. It's looking more and more like WWE might let him take that record. They just might let him go past Honky Tonk.
Well, I think they're like, it's what I mentioned a couple episodes before, where you're going to see the distancing of the 80s wrestlers, right?
Yeah.
Like the Hogan, like Hogan's getting his thing passed, Honky's getting his passed. It's just just Triple H wanting to showcase to the kids today that how great these wrestlers are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
like, I mean, it's fine, whatever.
Yeah. Well, and it's one of the people I had up in the group today as a Guess the Wrestler quiz was, of course, Nature Boy Buddy Rogers, and it's interesting when you read through the bios of these early day wrestlers in the context of their day. When he first won the NWA World Championship, it was considered the match of the century. Like that's how it was billed, and that's how it was communicated, and for a long time that's how it was remembered. These records and these promotional sort of angles that we use, they're bound to be passed and recycled. It's just the nature of the game. So every match coming is going to be the next greatest match of the century. So it's just kind of the nature of things. We had Finn Balor going up against Seth Rollins. Seth Rollins pulled out the win due to interference from Finn's own partner. He brought his money to the bank case to the ring and tried to help the way they portrayed it, or the way that he was trying to help Finn win the match by giving him the case to use. Finn misinterpreted it and tried to get it out of the ring or move it away from him. Damien tried to distract the ref, and when he did that, that gave Seth the opening to give him the curb stomp on the case, and that was the end of the match.
I didn't enjoy that match.
I'm a little, again, when you confuse them, you lose them, and I'm just a little bit confused about what they're trying to do with this whole split in the group between Damian Priest and Finn. The motivations are not super clear. So we know that Damian wants the title, and we know Finn wants the title. But it's just there's not much else to go on other than just the motivation of the title right now, and so we're just not really clear.
Yeah, and I really like Finn Balor. I think Seth is a fantastic worker, like one of the best in the world.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. The match just wasn't that good to me.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think also too, there's a little bit of there. I think everybody still has that taste in their mouth that this belt was just spontaneously created, and that there's not a lot of lineage for it, and that it hasn't existed long enough to have the shine it needs to be valuable.
Yeah.
It's just there hasn't been enough matches. Seth hasn't done enough impressive things with it. It just doesn't seem like a good enough reason for all this chaos that it's creating yet, because it certainly doesn't have the shine of the Intercontinental title right now, and the time and the shine that Gunther's been putting on that over the last couple of months and weeks. So I think that's hurting the angle a little bit, and it's also hurting the matches that are attached to it right now. So
yeah,
that just needs a little time to sort of to marinate and become a more valuable commodity.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Then we had the women's championship, the 3-way match between Bianca and Asuka and Charlotte. Bianca came out on top and won that match. Pretty decent match. Some nice athletic stuff going on in there. Some of the women are doing some pretty impressive things for sure. And then we had the swerve of Io Sky coming in and cashing in her Money in the Bank briefcase and taking the belt. So the new women's WWE champion is now Io Sky.
Huh. I fell asleep.
Yeah. it was probably the biggest swerve of the night in terms of surprises. I don't think anybody was expecting it at SummerSlam. So everyone was so focused on the Finn Balor, Damian Priest angle with the case that they they bait and switched us a little bit.
Yeah, I'd fallen asleep, so I missed like that part. It wasn't on purpose. I just fell asleep.
We had the final matchup between within the Bloodline series. Not the final matchup, but the matchup of the evening. The main event was Roman Reigns against his cousin. His cousin had Roman on the ropes. His brother interfered, Jimmy, and cost his brother the match. And so now there's a split between the Usos, and that tag team has been split up. And everybody has now sided with Roman, and Jay is on his own. At least that's what we know so far. And that was the end of that pay-per-view. So not the best pay-per-view they've given over the last couple of months. Wasn't the worst, but you know, it's what we're starting to see from WWE, even under the Hunter sort of regime. You're getting a couple of decent, cohesive storylines, some good wrestling, but some stuff is quite messy.
Yeah.
On the other side of the aisle, we had AEW Collision. They brought in Ricky the Dragon Steamboat as a special referee, which was great to see Ricky. And we had a matchup between CM Punk and Ricky Starks for the illegitimate, they're calling it now in AEW, the illegitimate world championship that CM Punk is carrying around with his spray-painted X symbol on the front of it. CM Punk went over Ricky Starks. No huge surprise there. Ricky took it out on Mr. Steamboat at the end of the match. There was some belt whipping and a few other things. CM Punk came to his defense and chased him off. And what we were told by the end of the night is we're going to now get CM Punk against Samoa Joe at All In London over in Wembley. So that's going to be the upcoming title match. No word yet in the dirt sheets on whether or not we're going to see a new world title for Collision. That's, I think, what we're all as belt fans sort of hoping is going to be the case as we go along here, that this storyline will eventually lead to Collision's own version of some type of AEW world title, but no word on that yet. So that was kind of the week in wrestling, certainly the weekend in wrestling. Moving on past that, we got into a few of the this day in wrestling sort of notable moments. One of the first was, if I can find it here. Here we go. Today was, on this date, in August 7th, 2001, on an episode of SmackDown, DDP and Kanyon became the first WCW tag team to hold the WWF Tag Team Championships when they beat the APA. Later in the exact same show, Kane and Undertaker became the first WWF team to win the WCW Tag Team. So it was a switch of promotional belts when they defeated Sean O'Haire and Chuck Palumbo. And on that same show, one of the most famous images was Rhino goring Chris Jericho through the Ovaltron. And it was the last taping to use the original SmackDown set. So all that happened on the same night. The tag belts would go on to be unified at SummerSlam on Taker and Kane later that month. And then on the same day, August 2002, Ron the Truth Killings defeated Ken Shamrock to become the very first African-American NWA World Champion heavyweight. It was the first of two reigns for him in the TNA. Very different character that he was working at that time, much different than the current Ron Killings sort of the Truth sort of comedy sort of gimmick that he works in WWE now. Right now, he was as serious as a heart attack back then, and was doing some pretty impressive work in the ring, actually. So he was a very strong champion for them at that time. And then their final slide on this day in history was August 7th, 2011. Kurt Angle defeated Sting to win the TNA World Heavyweight Championship at Hardcore Justice. This was the beginning of the end for Sting's Joker persona that was Not his most popular persona to date, but that was Kurt Angle going over on him in TNA. And that's that. So, what I wanted to get on to next was actually featuring the belt that Jesse was kind enough to bring along with him this evening. And so what I thought I would do is actually just cue our little intro video. And I thought, Jesse, we'll go right into that and we'll have you bring that up and we'll give you the full screen and you can tell us all about it.
Good.
All right, Jesse. So what belt did you bring with you tonight that we can sort of see?
This is the original 1975 to 1980 NWA Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling United States Heavyweight title. It was first held by Harley Race. He won it in a tournament beginning in 1975. And this is the belt.
Wow, look at that.
It is 6mm cast brass, gold plating.
Wow.
And it is misspelled. It was made by Nikita Molkovich. He made a lot of belts back in those days. He was one of the main people to make cast belts.
Mm-hmm.
And he had made this one. He made the belts that Manny Fernandez and Rick Rude held, the NWA tag title belts. He made the Sheik a U.S. title like this one, very similar. The side plates were changed a little bit, and it was for the Detroit version.
Beautiful.
The belt used 11 champions, 11 legends held this title. It started off with Harley Race, then Johnny Valentine, and he was in possession of this belt the night of the infamous airplane accident in Wilmington, North Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
And he still had possession of the belt when they had a tournament in November, and Terry Funk won the tournament by beating Paul Jones, and they didn't have the belt in their possession, so they used Blackjack Mulligan's WWF tag title because he had possession of it, and he was in the tournament for the U.S. title here. And then
Beautiful.
2 weeks later, Paul Jones beat Terry Funk for the title. Then Terry went on to win the world heavyweight title from Harley Race.
Mm-hmm.
The title is, I had this one made last year. Up until last year, no one had actually been making this particular belt. They were making the second version plates, which was used from 1980 to 1982. And the northeastern part of the country was shaven down. It was a lot shorter. And Nikita Molkovich also took out the two grapplers here and put in a donkey and an elephant, kind of a hint toward the political parties of the country.
Right.
And then he changed and put an eagle where the side plates, the flag side plates are at. And they put it on black leather, and 5 champions held that title. Sergeant Slaughter is in possession of that title right now. He was the last one to have it in his possession when they switched over to the Levy or Southern style U.S. title. This is something I've wanted since 1975, and it's taken me years to be able to get it. And I've had several versions, but I worked really hard with the designer, a belt maker that I met, and using this book written by Dick Bourne. It shows really good photographs that I had forgotten that the belt had a buckle on it. I had forgotten that the side plates were a little different. I knew that the northeastern part of the United States was longer, but everybody's making the second version and putting it on red leather and saying it's the original version, and it's incorrect. That is the second version. It should be on black leather. This one was totally different in the shape of the whole United States. You can see the long part of it, totally different.
Yeah.
And I was able to get Ricky Steamboat to sign it.
Oh, wow.
this past weekend. Before
That's
he went
amazing.
to AEW, he was in Roanoke, so they flew him from Roanoke to wherever the pay-per-view was at, I think South Carolina,
Mhm.
and then they flew him back to Roanoke for the Comic-Con that was there.
Interesting.
But it's
Did he remember the belt, Jesse? Did Mr. Steamboat remember it?
Oh yes. Oh, when he seen, I got some good photographs. When he seen it, it brought back a lot of memories because he beat Ric Flair for this belt in 1978. He held this particular title on 3 different occasions,
Interesting.
and so he seen it, and he said it. They even misspelled it, and he told me. He said the whole time I held it, I never noticed it was misspelled. And the majority of the people that did, they never knew that it was misspelled. And Nikita Molkovich misspelled the first version and the second version, but he spelled the Detroit version for the Sheik correctly. So it's a mystery as to why he would do that, but it makes it more valuable. And he really fell in love with this, and he said it took him back to the 70s.
That's awesome. That's a really nice moment. That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that with us. I really appreciate that, sir.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome.
pleasure.
I love the stuff I love
Enjoy.
about this hobby and about wrestling and about belt collecting in general is the stories and the people behind it.
I'll
So
just
keep
hold
that
it
there,
right
sir.
here.
You are the champion.
So Jesse, I got a question for you. I got this belt here, and it's what is this one? It says the National NWA.
That's the current one, right?
That's the national. That's the national heavyweight title that's in use now
Oh,
with
okay.
Billy Corgan's NWA, and
Okay.
it's paying homage to the original.
Right.
But I think Red's Leather, I think, is the person who made that belt. He did his own little version of the nameplate, but it's paying homage to it.
Okay.
Yeah, because I see that they have that
WWE
extension.
owns. Yeah, the WWE owns the U.S. title name because they bought WCW, which had bought Jim Crockett, and Jim Crockett had the NWA United States heavyweight title. I had a national at the time too, but they consolidated them and kept the U.S. title. And so there you go. Yes.
Okay, because I have this national title as well, and I also have another one I was going to ask you about that I got recently. It was the cast one that says NWA National. So
yes,
are they part of the same lineage then? Are these 3 belts like I know Billy
the
Corgan.
national? In kind of a way, it would be. I think the nationals that you were showing me were basically out of Georgia Championship Wrestling area.
Okay.
So it was different than the Crockett. When Crockett kind of bought Georgia time slot and bought their, I'm not going to say company, but bought them out, but consolidated them all. So it would actually fall into the same lineage. It's just that it was a different version. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that. That's awesome.
Yeah. Well, and one of the challenges with the U.S. title, I was actually going to mention that. So a lot of people kind of get confused by it. The NWA had multiple United States titles and multiple territories. And it wasn't actually until in 1975 when this belt was established in Crockett's promotion in Mid-Atlantic. That didn't happen. Sorry, it was 1981. Yeah, 81 actually when the belt changed, and I think that's when the lineage of that first version switched to the second version. That was actually the beginning of the United States Championship being exclusive to Crockett's promotion in 81, because that was when the last territory U.S. belt was phased out. But up to that point, there were multiple U.S. titles everywhere.
There were a lot of different territories. They had them quite. You're quite right. This title stopped being used in like July of 1980. Greg Valentine beat Ric Flair for this title, and it was so torn up. Part of Florida was broken off. Part of Texas was missing. The side plates with the flags, the flag part was missing. It was just a brass piece on it. So they commissioned Nikita Molkovich to make a new belt. And he made the newer one. It looks like this, and they presented it to Greg Valentine, and Greg Valentine on air said he had to have a new belt made because the old belt smelt like Ric Flair, and he couldn't stand the stench. So he had to go have a new belt made. So Valentine got the second belt and the fourth belt. He was the only one to debut both of those. He was a title holder when they debuted the big silver belt too. So he debuted the second version on black leather and the big silver belt.
Awesome.
But yeah, then I think because Crockett went so national that he became the number one guy, that their NWS title become more prominent than everybody else because all the other territories were folding. So they were kind of big fun.
Awesome. Thank you for all that. That's man, I think anybody that wants to learn about the lineage of that belt, hopefully will check out our video and replay of this and be able to sort of follow up on that information and get educated and informed on the U.S. Heavyweight Championship. Pretty impressive stuff. I'm actually going to transition us now.
And it's made by Agazi Martial Arts.
Oh, yes. Yeah, please say that again. What was the name of the maker?
The maker is Agazi Martial Arts, and he does exceptionally good cast work. Yeah.
Excellent.
Agasi.
Ghazi. That's a new name to me. Have you heard of him before, Tony? That's a new one to me. Ghazi Martial Arts. All right. Good to know. Good to know. All right. We are moving forward with our format, and we are moving towards our quiz of the week. And our wrestler this week directly is connected to, and has already actually been mentioned once or twice, in relation to the United States heavyweight. All right, so here's how this week works. I'm going to give you a little brief clue about this wrestler's background, and I'm going to play you a snippet of their very first WWF entrance theme. So the clue is this particular wrestler started off with a background in amateur wrestling. He was trained by Vern Gagne in the Iron Sheik and debuted in Gagne's AWA in 1976. It wasn't until he moved on to Championship Wrestling in Florida that he got his now famous wrestling name, which was suggested to him by promoter Eddie Graham because he resembled a Hawaiian wrestler that Eddie Graham knew. The theme, which a lot of people will associate with a number of sports franchises, in particular the Chicago Bulls, and also I'm told the Vancouver Canucks as well, is this. And that's the clue we get. What do you think, Tony? Any ideas? Jesse's nodding. Jesse knows.
We know.
We know. So, of course, we've already mentioned him once or twice this evening. We're talking about the one and the only Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, one of my favorite wrestlers of all time. I love his work in the ring. I think he's one of the smoothest wrestlers I've ever had the pleasure of watching. His epic NWA trilogy with Ric Flair is still one of my favorite sequences of matches I've ever watched, and still go back and watch them all the time. And yeah, love to have it. Go for it.
I have some 8mm film from the mid-'70s. I remember when Steamboat first came to Jim Crockett Promotions, they threw him right in with Ric Flair, and they had some remarkable matches. They were just like night and day, positive image, negative image. They were so in tune with each other. And that U.S. title that I made when I was 13, I took it to the show in October of '77 to give to Steamboat that night, and had an inscription on the back. I wanted him to beat Flair, even though I was a big Flair mark. I wanted him to beat Flair that night, and I I got cold feet and I didn't give it to him, and I wish I had it. And we talked about that the other day. But his matches in Greensboro and Winston and the surrounding areas with Flair was just phenomenal. The Flair rubbing his face in the concrete, the stuff that they did, it was just, the magic was just there. And he was known in that time. He was known as the Hawaiian Punch. Rich Landrum and a few other people gave him that name, and I found out this past weekend that was his CB handle back then because everybody was on CBs, and so that's where he used it on that. But Ricky Steamboat's got the best arm drag in the business.
I was saying that to Tony just before the show backstage. Yeah, I've never seen anybody do an arm drag as smoothly as he did.
And you don't even see them anymore in wrestling at all,
No.
except maybe some of the independents, but there's a lot of wrestling you don't
and
see.
I mean, when you think about like the breadth of his work and like the WrestleMania 3 match with Savage and the matches in the NWA with Flair and the matches that he had in WCW before his retirement. I mean, he's just had such consistent great work all the way through his career. So yeah.
And he's still in great shape.
Yeah, he was, and he was bumping really well in the ring as when he was roughing this weekend for Punk and for Ricky. Took some great bumps to sort of sell Ricky stuff at the end, and it was he's still got it.
Oh
he still got it.
Had his final match in Raleigh just a few months ago, or 5 or 6 months ago. So he's still getting around. He's still doing good.
Yeah, he looked fantastic too. I really did think so. With one of my favorite tag teams, FTR, right now, who's doing some great work. So let's see. We covered our wrestler of the week. Just a final word on the recent. We did an intercontinental top 12 greatest intercontinental champions of all time in CBC this past 12 weeks. We've been doing votes every Friday. We have a Friday fantasy booking series we run. It finally came down to Razor Ramon and Bret Hart, and I am happy to announce that the winner of the matchup and the winner of the tournament for this particular Friday Fantasy round was... Awesome. I can see Tony smiling. He's a happy man. Bret Hart came through. It was a really great tournament. Some really interesting sort of matchups ended up coming out of this. Bret Hart, of course, came through and took it all in the end. We had Rick Rude, Razor Ramon, The Miz, Bret Hart, Eddie Guerrero, Shawn Michaels, Chris Jericho, Macho Man, Honky Tonk Man, Owen Hart, Gunther, and Kurt Hennig. My sentimental favorite in this tournament was, of course, Macho Man Randy Savage, but I would have been happy with any of these people winning. I thought they were all great representatives of the title and great wrestlers. So yeah, we had a great run. The next tournament upcoming has to be decided in the coming week, and I am offering a few options for people to consider who get to see this video in future tense. We are looking at considering the 12 greatest WCW world champions of all time, the 12 greatest NWA world champions of all time, 12 greatest ECW world champions, 12 greatest TNA Impact world champions, 12 greatest Ring of Honor champions, 12 greatest AWA world champions, 12 greatest IWGP, or the 12 greatest All Japan Pro Wrestling World Champions. So we're going to take a vote this upcoming Friday. We're going to let you guys decide which one of those categories you'd like to focus on for the tournament. The following week, we will work on populating our list of top 12 based on everybody's preference of favorites. So we're going to be choosing one of these world title lineages to run in a tournament, and we'll decide which wrestler you guys think, based on your votes, was the best representative for that belt or the best champion for that promotion. So that is coming up. So something to look forward to going forward. which leads us to everybody's favorite part of the night, which I love, is Tony's Collector's Corner. All right, Tony, what did you bring for us tonight?
Well, I have two things, but first I'm going to start off. We're gonna follow the theme. Back when I was a kid, you would have got this Ricky Steamboat when you got your LJN figure.
Hey, let me get that big screen up there for you. There we go.
This is and actually the graphic on the back of the boxes when they were advertising the other figures, his pants were red, but you never got that. This is what you got. So what I did was I did two simple ones. These ones aren't great compared to some of my others. I did a Ricky Steamboat. He's got mold on his chest. I did the big gold. I did the green tights with the darker green boots that he wore when he worked with Ric Flair.
Yeah.
And then I did. So this one is. I'm gonna take the belt off. This one here is Ricky Steamboat WrestleMania 3 attire. I did the white.
Nice.
Yeah. I did the lace.
Tights.
Yeah. Put wristbands on the bandana.
Red headband.
Yeah. So, I mean, nothing too crazy, but seeing as how we were talking about Ricky Steamboat, this is who I wanted to show off.
Man, love it.
Yeah, and the other collectible of the week is I haven't debuted this belt yet, but I'm doing our first ever new belt day, as it was buried under my other belts, on our show. I got the version 1 of the IWGP heavyweight title, the one that Hulk Hogan won. As everyone knows that watches our show, I'm a huge Hulkamaniac. And so I wanted to add this to the collection. This is a cast belt made by Muhammad of Rana Belts. Absolutely
beautiful. That's a beautiful belt.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's smaller, but it's thick. It's just great.
I love the simplicity of it, and the like. It looks like a medal or an award.
Yeah,
and I love those older titles and the way they look. And Japan's always had, because they put such a focus on sort of the sports aspect of the wrestling.
Yeah,
they've always had a real sort of trophy championship sort of feel to them. So
yeah. Belt too.
Love it, man. That's great. Thank you for sharing that with us tonight. That is fantastic.
Jesse's got his belt. I got my belt. We're good.
Yeah, I got mine right here. It's just back here. Nice, man. That was fantastic. I really appreciate you guys sharing all that stuff with us and giving us all those insights. Jesse, man, I love the stories and all the background that you gave us, particularly the Ricky Steamboat stories and and your history as a fan and as a continued participant in the world of pro wrestling and your work as a manager. That's pretty awesome.
I also make custom figures.
Really?
I didn't know this.
Really?
Wow.
I did Ricky Steamboat when he was in the NWA with this U.S. title. I have that one, and he's wearing red trunks. When he went to Vince McMahon, when he started wearing the full leg tights, but before he would wear trunks. So I did him. I've done Johnny Valentine, Wahoo McDaniels, Ivan Koloff, Blackjack Mulligan, the Russian Assassin. I'm getting ready to do Tony Atlas. I did a local wrestler here in North Carolina named Rob Boogie Woogie Man McBride. I did one for him, and I did one for a good friend of mine who wrestled in WWF and WCW, Chuck Coates. So I do custom figures also. They're on my page.
That's amazing.
What type of custom figures? I just collect the rubber LJNs, the old that particular line, and that's where I make my customs. I didn't know you made the custom figures. Huh.
Yeah, I want to put together the set from 1976, 1977, Jim Crockett Promotions, and I've already got everything planned in my mind. I've done a lot of model making over the last 35 years. I've had stuff in a couple of movies, in magazines, and so it's a passion of mine. And this 1/12 scale, the 6 or 7 inch figures, is a different scale for me, but I'm really enjoying it and I'm getting into it. So I plan on doing all the wrestlers from Crockett Promotions in the 70s.
That's amazing.
That is
awesome. That is super awesome. And it's not an era that a lot of people focus on. So to have that collection will be pretty awesome.
that was the year I was born, was 1976, and I'm very nostalgic, and I love learning about the stuff from 1976, 77, just because that was the year I was born, right? So that's really cool. I really like that.
Talking about 1977, the Masked Superstar and Paul Jones had a feud going, and in Greensboro, and that was the night that I took the belt to give to Steamboat. But that night, Paul Jones got his hair cut by the Masked Superstar, and I was able to snag some of it off the apron of the ring, and I gave it to my dad. He put it in a cigarette cellophane pack and came home and taped it up with Scotch tape and put it in the Bible, and it was still in the Bible when I moved back home 15 years ago. So I have that. To me, that's priceless.
That is
amazing.
That is amazing. That's
is
awesome. That's a hardcore fan right there, ladies and gentlemen.
Absolutely.
So, absolutely.
I fell in love with it young, and I've been diehard for it all my life. So it's
me too. Me too. I started probably early 80s, 82, 83, just because of my age range, and been following it everywhere, all over the world ever since. Love it. So
I'm 60, so I've been around for a while. I'm old.
A little bit older than me. A little bit.
I'm 47, and I have to be honest here. You were watching wrestling before Hulkamania, but it was Hulkamania that attracted me to wrestling. Like, I remember when he beat Sheik, and I remember when like they were building at WrestleMania 1, and so I love to learn about the NWA stuff, but I was just WWF. Hulk Hogan was he's what got me into wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
And I never seen the WWF until 81 or 82. Before that, I was diehard Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling, and was at a friend's house in 81, and he had the WWF on. And oh, wow. So that's what I see it in the magazines, but I'd skim through that and went to the good stuff that I thought was good. So it's, whatever territory you grew up in, that's what you're seeing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's something we've talked about on this show, because I'm from the west coast of Canada. So we used to get a lot of Stampede wrestling on TV, and we used to get a lot of the local stuff from British Columbia, Vancouver. But we wouldn't get the NWA. We would once a month get the AWA, the NWA, and there was also a couple others that we would just get once a month. But it was like Maple Leaf Wrestling and WWF.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, we were lucky in the East Coast because in Canada, because we were actually, my introduction to wrestling was through Rene Dupree's Atlantic Grand Prix Wrestling, and he was sharing talent with the NWA, and then also sharing talent with, because it was one of the territories, and then he was also sharing talent with Stu Hart. Yeah. So it was sort of, he was getting some folks directly from Mid-South and also from Mid-Atlantic and from the Florida promotion and those territories, and he was also getting some of the seasonal wrestlers that didn't want to do the north trip in Stu's promotion during the winter, didn't want to go up into the northern territories and do the icy roads, so they'd go east and go to Halifax because the route was shorter and easier, and so you got to see Harley, and we got to see Harley Race, got to see Randy Savage, got to see Lenny Poffo, and a lot of those wrestlers that were sort of making their way through the NWA territories at that time. So actually, before I ever saw Hulk Hogan or the WWF, I was seeing that stuff first. So yeah. I love the WWF stuff too. I grew to enjoy that just as much as I love the NWA stuff. So
yeah, I remember when Flair first came to the Carolinas, I knew he was going to be great before he had the airplane accident. Just something about him. His whole persona, started doing the woo, and he wasn't wearing the robes at first, but I just knew he was going to be great. And here he is.
There he is.
21 times or more world champion and legend.
Yeah.
Song,
Yeah. Nobody lived it more than he did. So yeah, that's for sure. Yeah, lived that gimmick, and just really, I mean, he could still the way he even on his podcast, and the way he tells stories and the way he connects to the work and how much he believes it and how much he's invested in it. It's hard not to get caught up in that passion. So
yeah. I've become a big Ric Flair fan later on in life. I like absolutely love Ric Flair now, and when I was young, I hated him. Like, he was such a good heel, right? You saw him in magazines, and then you saw snippets. I just was like, who is this guy? And then when he came to WWF, I was like, I couldn't stand him. I was like, no, who is? And I was like, Hulk Hogan all the way. And I just, but now I'm older. I'm like, man, like even Hogan says Flair's the man. Like, he could do 60-minute match. You know, he was having 60-minute matches all over the place, right? And yeah, so.
Yeah.
Well, watch the interview with Terry Taylor. Flair shows up with a huge hangover. Terry's scared to death that he's going to get hurt in the ring. And Flair said, just listen to what I say. And halfway through the match, which was 45, 50 minutes, Terry Taylor was ready to tap out. Flair's still wanting to go. So his body, he's superhuman. He's been struck by lightning twice. He's almost died 3 or 4 times. I mean, so the guy ain't human. It's great.
Yeah. Well, guys, that actually concludes our show this evening, and I really appreciate you coming on again with us, Jesse. That was really just fantastic. It was such great stories and such great background and information about the U.S. title and your connection to it. So we really appreciate you coming on tonight and sharing all that with us.
Thank you very much for having me. I enjoyed it, and I hope to do it again.
We'd love to have you back again. We really enjoyed having you here. Tony, thanks again, man, for bringing on that awesome championship and showing off your steamboat figures for us and all of your insights and information this evening. Really, really, really appreciate it. Thanks to everybody that joined us and was hanging out with us through the night. We really appreciate you guys being here and saying hi. And if you get a chance, in hindsight, this will be posted up in our group later today. Later this evening, check out this video if you want to learn about the U.S. Heavyweight Championship. Jesse's your man, and he dropped some real knowledge tonight. So definitely very, very useful, and definitely check it out. And check out Jesse's page and check out his custom figures. He's in the process of creating executing a really cool idea of getting the Mid-Atlantic roster put together. So. Pretty cool stuff. Anything you want to leave anybody with this week, Tony?
No, you know what? Just like every other week, I'm ready for bed.
That works for me, man. Everybody have a great week. Hug your loved ones. Be kind to each other. Have a great week, and we'll see you again next Monday. Peace.